Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Poisoner's Almanac. I'm your co-host, Adam.
I'm Rebecca.
How you doing today, sweetheart?
I'm all right. These last few weeks have been a little crazy, I'm not gonna lie.
Hmm.
Mainly because with everything going on right now and me adjusting to this routine of like her being here doing school too.
Yes.
Like if one thing goes wrong, it's like a domino effect. And like this last week, she had an appointment. She had an appointment to go to her orthodontist to get those things. She's finished with phase one of her Invisalign treatment, which means she gets those things off and she has to wear a retainer for a little bit and at night. So that's great. But I took her on Tuesday because I thought the appointment was on Tuesday. Got there and nobody was there. It was all closed up. And then I realized it's tomorrow. It's Wednesday. And so I got her on my phone to get on her class, but she was going to miss. And I already told the teacher, I was like, she's got this appointment or whatever. So the teacher was probably like, why is she signing in like 10 minutes late to class? And she's not even supposed to be here. And like, but she's really nice. She let her in and I explained the situation. And she was like, that sounds like something I would do. I'm like, yeah, yeah. So the ADHD one this week. And I did get her to her appointment the next day, but it was just like after that, like it felt like I
For
was
everything else on.
behind
Yep.
on everything. But it's good. We're going to make it. It's going to be great. I'm kind of grunge today. It's almost spooky season. So I feel
Which
fine
you're
wearing
happy
those.
about.
And I've got my I don't know if you can see it, my Indiana Jones pants
It's in the
on.
shot.
These are my Indiana Jones pants because I
That's
used to
right.
want to be Indiana Jones when I was a kid.
That's a great choice.
Yeah. I hear it doesn't pay well though in real life, unfortunately.
I had a dizzy spell hit me yesterday toward the end of my workday that forced me to go home.
You're getting too old,
Something like that. I think it really was just fatigue.
probably. Yeah.
I came home and I
Yeah.
laid down and it was like 3 p.m. and I slept until dinner time, got up and ate, and then I was just basically relaxing the rest of the evening. Went to bed at a decent hour, slept a little later than I have been, and I feel pretty good today.
As soon as it's funny because until you said I relaxed and then went to bed, I was like, oh, so you lived a neurodivergent life for a little bit. But no, we don't do that last part very often.
Yeah. I've been burning it down as far as just my daily schedule. I've been going to bed much earlier, waking up much earlier, basically for the sake of content creation. You know, any videos we make for our socials, I edit them and I use an online tool to schedule them to be posted. And the last 2 Mondays in a row, because of that rhythm, I was able to get all of that work done in a single morning, which I very much liked. But I think it just caught up with me. And the
Mhm.
bottom line is we work too hard in America.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta have that side hustle and all that. But I think,
Right.
honestly, though, you're kind of essential to this whole operation because I am terrible when it comes to remembering that I even have social media. I remember the podcast because I like doing the research for it. But then it'll be the end of the week and I'm like, I should check in on the Discord or I should check in on the Instagram. Like, oh my
Yes.
gosh, I'm not neglecting you. I promise.
Yeah.
I just forget.
There's
So,
a lot to do.
yeah.
So anyways, let's go for some comments from Spotify. Thomas is back again. Thomas Paris. He said, why are snake oil salesmen so able to operate in the U.S.? They've been known to be crooks since the 1800s. And friend, I can answer that with one word: capitalism. I should say greed.
Well,
Greed is not, capitalism is not actually the culprit. It's greed.
yeah. And there's
Because any economic
misinformation
system,
too.
any economic system gets ruined by greed, no matter what it is.
And a lack of trust in the medical community, which I feel like is kind of misplaced. Like, people always, ooh, his head comes off. People are always saying, oh, I don't trust doctors. And I'm like, who you shouldn't be trusting is these hospital CEOs and these insurance people. Says doctors work, they do, most of them, I'm not saying all of them, most of them do work hard to get, people what they need through the insurance companies, the insurance people
Yes.
that run healthcare. Because if they say you can't have something, then doctors can't do anything about it.
That's right.
So it really sucks.
Jesse Bone says, I love peppermint oil. It helps with my nausea and relaxing.
Yeah, I have heard
So
good
there you
things.
go.
I have heard good things about peppermint.
Veronica says, all hail the lemon water.
The lemon water. I can't drink lemon water. I don't think it's obviously not bad for you. That's one of the ones that I'm like, totally do it if you want. It's not going to cure cancer, obviously,
Sure.
but I can't handle it because of the acid reflux.
And Sam says, we need to outlaw the word like from our collective vocabulary.
Like, I say like a lot.
Yes, it's a
I do.
verbalized pause. Like,
Yes.
so
I grew up.
anyways.
I also grew up watching things like Clueless, okay? And like,
Totally.
as if, I can say a lot of, clueless isms, I think.
So let's go for Poison in the News. And just a bit of an update for you guys. The Poison in the News segment is actually going to be spun off into a patron-only segment as like a standalone episode for a different tier on the Patreon. We've got an update coming for you guys. We're going to make a video announcement where we explain how everything's going to go. But we've got some updates to what we're offering as far as content on the podcast and more tiers for patrons.
I am working on the Camilla-sodes, as I'm calling them.
It's so
with
cute.
Camilla.
I love that name.
We're going to be doing some kid sort of centered, kid focused stuff with exploring nature and I don't know, maybe some foraging, but mostly like, hey, don't touch this because that's poison. Because what else? We talk about poisons and stuff on here, but also just being safe out there and exploring and being kind to your environment, learning more about it and stuff like that. So that is in the works.
Yeah.
Just for those who think like she talked about it like one time and she hasn't done anything. I promise I'm doing it.
It's coming.
I'm doing it.
So, yeah, be on the lookout for that video announcement. We're going to post that to the socials. We'll post it to the podcast feed as well, so everybody will see it. So, Poison in the News, folks. We had some huge developments yesterday regarding the national regulatory bodies that keep people from being poisoned in the United States. There were several officials that resigned from the CDC, or rather, the director of the CDC, who'd been on the job for a month, was fired because she refused to resign.
I heard they were doing like a little coup.
Something like that.
Yeah, good for them.
Something like, yes, very good for them. And 4 or 5 other top level officials at the CDC resigned in kind in response to the firing of Susan Minares. One of them is Dr. Dimitri Dalasakis. I hope I'm saying that name correctly. I've seen it misspelled a couple of ways. These officials, I have seen them immediately accept invitations to be interviewed by legacy news media in the U.S. And they are sounding the alarm against particularly RFK Jr.
Again.
Once again.
You could really say again because it's been going for a while.
So Dr. Dalasakis and several of these other officials have done interviews that have aired today, this morning. So you guys can all go look those up. Dr. Dalasakis is the one that caught my attention the most because he posted his resignation letter to Twitter. And it is lengthy and it explains exactly why he has resigned. He says, I'm writing to formally resign my position as director of the National Center for Immunization and Respiratory Diseases at the CDC. Effective August 28th at the close of business. That was yesterday. I'm happy to stay on for 2 weeks. Yeah, I'm happy to stay on for 2 weeks to provide transition if requested. I don't think they've requested it. I think they let him walk.
I'm surprised to hear that they even still have the immunization department.
That's a great point.
Which is sad to say.
This decision does not come easily, as I deeply value the work that the CDC does in safeguarding public health, and I'm proud of my contributions to that critical mission. However, after much contemplation and reflection on recent developments and perspectives brought to light by Secretary Kennedy, I find that the views he and his staff have shared challenge my ability to continue in my current role at the agency and in the service of the health of the American people. Enough is enough.
And honestly, they just got attacked.
Yes.
Literally.
He mentions that.
Because, I mean, of misinformation.
Yep.
Dude went up there with a gun and...
Yep.
I don't know.
And he later in the letter, he literally says, the recent shooting at CDC is not why I'm resigning.
Yeah.
My grandfather, who I am named after, stood up to fascist forces in Greece and lost his life doing so. I am resigning to make him and his legacy proud. I'm resigning because of the cowardice of a leader that cannot admit that his and his minions' words over decades created an environment where violence like this can occur.
Yeah.
I reject his and his colleagues' thoughts and prayers and advise they direct those to people that they have not actively harmed. So I've seen 2 interviews so far, just clips. And this is something this is really, one of the main points I wanted to bring. I have never understood why RFK Jr. believes what he believes. There appears to be no ideological tether to what he's doing. I have never understood. I'm like, okay, you're anti-vax, you're pro-raw milk, you are anti-science, you are all these ridiculous things. What is the unifying factor? And Dr. Dalasakis, forgive me for mispronouncing, Dr. Dalasakis said this in an interview. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the Secretary of Health and Human Services, is a eugenicist.
Yeah, it makes sense.
That's the unifying factor.
Yeah. I mean, now, obviously with the whole like raw milk, no vaccine stuff, that does go along with that because he's thinking like kill off all the people who can't handle a virus. Of course, that's a very egotistic way of looking at it because, I mean, he can easily get taken down by a virus. I feel like
He's no different
I feel like
than the
he
rest
thinks
of
he's
us.
bulletproof, even
He
though he's literally dealt with, as he called it, the worm in his brain, the tapeworm that he had, and also the mercury poisoning from all the fish that he ate in those godforsaken polluted rivers that he also likes to swim in. But he's also a lawyer, and he gets really good money for referring these kinds of lawsuits because he knows a lot of these people will settle because it's easier to settle and it's cheaper to settle than to go to court. And because he's saying these things, he's setting up this misinformation so that it can be used in court, so that he can get more money in the future, right? Like if he is able to do this and then make up faulty claims and make them stick, which obviously I don't know how he's really going to do that because we have information that says, no, that's not true. But if he can somehow, I don't know, it's like he's trying to continue on the work of Dr. Wakefield, for instance, right? If he can get something out there that a judge will believe.
1930s Germany.
It just doesn't make any sense. If he can get that mindset into everybody, then popular idea of, this is wrong, even though it's like nobody's going to know what's right and what's wrong anymore because of the way they're twisting it, if that makes any sense.
Dr. Dalasakis, he mentioned directly, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. would prefer that avian flu burn its way through the chicken population of the United States. And then that would prove that the surviving chickens are the ones that should be bred because they are stronger.
I don't think he really knows how evolution works.
Well, again,
it's not how evolution works.
I've always been looking for, but what does this guy really believe? Why is he fighting against germ theory? Why is he fighting this so much? It's because he is a supremacist. He's a white supremacist, first of all, but he's a genetic supremacist.
True. I just don't
This is the unifying factor.
What I don't get, though, is why they don't agree with germ theory. I mean, I don't agree with them on anything, but
he wants to leverage it. He wants to leverage it in such a way to weed out the weak, only the strong survive mentality.
But
that's really where he's coming from.
But it kills them too.
I don't think he cares about that. And I think there
is no supremacy.
Well, he's choosing to ignore that. I think his ideology, his hateful, bigoted ideology, if this is to be believed from Dr. Dalasakis, this is where all of his information comes from.
I will say people like him do ignore the fact that poverty is a big issue with illness.
Yes.
And so when they see, illness seems to ravage them, it's because of poverty.
Poor. Yes.
And they don't have the access to care.
Yes, they don't have access.
They don't have the privileges that you and your little rich family have had. And it's, they don't want to talk about that. They just want to be like, we must just have better genes.
No,
you don't, Sydney.
Right.
You don't have better genes.
Another thing that Dr. Dalasakis made public with Caitlin Collins when he did an interview with her, as well as two other officials that have just resigned from CDC. Dr. Dalasakis says, I want the media to ask Secretary Kennedy how often he has actually been briefed by top officials from the CDC. And Caitlin Collins interrupts and she's like, what's the answer to that question? He goes, oh, never.
No. But he literally tells people we should not be trusting medical experts. He literally says it. He says that out loud.
It's true. But the idea that he literally is running the HHS and has never, take a meeting, bro. All you got to do is you don't have to, I don't know. It's unconscionable.
But he wants to continue believing what he believes.
Well, that's true. But he's just the idea.
Even if he gets other evidence or other information, he's not going to stop believing what he believes. So it's useless to him.
I'm assuming that he wants to at least be cordial.
He's an opportunist.
Yes.
That's what he is.
So now we know from Dr. Dalasakis saying it publicly, he literally has never been briefed.
He just says things. He literally just makes things up.
And Caitlin Collins asked the question, well, why is that? And he goes, I don't know. And she goes, where is he getting his information? if he never actually confers with the CDC, where does he get it? Yeah, it's from the brain
I'm
worm.
just kidding. I'm kidding.
Apparently, he's getting his information from everywhere but the CDC,
Facebook,
which is hysterical. So, this whole, obviously it's extremely concerning that the director of CDC, a Trump appointee, mind you, would say, "Oh, I've had it."
Yep.
And
it doesn't surprise me though, knowing how he feels about experts, right? Like it doesn't surprise me that he's not going to listen to the CDC. He wants to kind of put them out as these lying. He wants to make them the enemy. He always has.
Yeah.
He wants to set them up as, oh, they lie to you, but I don't. Trust me, come with me. It's very Saja Boy,
But then also
which definitely not as cute.
Then he also says in a congressional hearing, people shouldn't take health advice from me.
Yeah, he does say that. Or he also said, well, what I think about immunizations is not important. Okay. So I am glad that somebody is standing up to that entire.
Yes. And even further, Robert F. Kennedy has commented publicly that the president has superior genes as well.
Okay.
And it reminds me of when Elon Musk and Steve Bannon did a Sig Heil.
Oh my God.
On camera. And everybody in MAGA was like, that's not what that was. And I'm like, brother, that's exactly what that was.
But they also, a lot of the people who are like obsessed with them hold to those values that go along with that entire fascist sort of movement.
They're trying to massage that Third Reich out of everybody who's willing. They want to pull that to the front, baby.
And like we normally don't talk about politics here, but now we're dealing with.
We can't not talk about it.
Well, now we're dealing with healthcare stuff with genetics, which is involved with obviously healthcare, medicine, things like that. They're making it such, and they're hurting people. But he's not a stranger to hurting people. I mean, look what he did to
American Samoa.
Yeah, where he went to this.
He traveled there to specifically spread anti-vax propaganda,
and it got a lot of people killed.
Children died. 80-something children
from measles.
Yeah,
and then he said, "Well,
I wasn't there to spread propaganda. I was there to install a new data collection system."
That man wouldn't know what data was if it hit him in the head.
He's like, is he Satan? I have no other options.
Yeah. Well, they're also
like, are you a demon?
He's also saying that in September he's going to have the answer for autism.
He ain't going to have nothing.
I'm like, sir,
I'm just.
Which it's like he's either going to make something up and have a bunch of false data, like he did with that. What was it, that thing they released that had all the false citations? And then they were like, God. Oh, that was an error, coding error. And
they used ChatGPT. Yeah, they used it.
But, or he's going to put it off and blame it on something.
Right. So this is new information. I just cannot, I got to stop. I don't want the country to crumble from the inside. So it's always a shock when they just push their ideology to its logical end, and every time I'm still shocked. But it's just
you gotta lean into that millennial mindset, Adam. You gotta stop being shocked by things. Nothing shocks me anymore, and so you gotta just prepare your brain for the madness to come, because it's just and I hate it, but
all the boomers are mad at us for our avocado toast. And I'm like, we just want to feel happy. We know that nobody's coming to help us. Let us have the toast. Shut up.
There are some boomers out there that are on our side, few and far between.
Yes, I see them. They're sprinkled throughout the comments.
Just like there's plenty of millennials who are cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Okay.
Are there? Are there plenty?
There's I
just feel like there's not.
Adam, we live in Georgia. Think about all the people that you grew up with.
I'm going back to bed.
Just saying.
All right. Let's take us to housekeeping here. Be sure to follow us on whatever platform you're listening on. Thanks in advance for leaving 5-star reviews. Follow us on socials. We got links in the show notes for those accounts. The Patreon's up and running. As we said before, there's content updates coming to the Patreon. Camilla Sode's Poison in the News is going to be spun off to its own own episode type.
Which will give us more time to go into the actual content, because some people don't want to hear about what's going on in the news, and we get that.
Right.
I get that.
Patrons who support the podcast monthly for a single United States dollar per month get access to weekly bonus episodes an option to leave us a voicemail that we listen to and react to on the podcast, and you get shouted out by name. Those people are as follows: 87 Pens Girl 71, Mara Santiago, Grace Lahan, Genevieve, Nahev Shetreat, Jay Went, Incan Hafner, Kiri Yorsek, Tay of Sunshine, Monique, Shane R., Sue Steves, James Mills, Megan Geiler, Liz B., Willie Wolf NZ, Mama G, Nicole Rivers, Richard Miyako, Heather Nolan, Kaylee, Sasha Rubel, Maya Shostak, Maggie's Yarm, Ogre the Viking, Lynn Rocket, Brett Moser, Zaid, Neil Houdini, Nicole Crane, Jefferson Vargas, Carmen Q, Sarah G, Knittin Ninja, Estar, Olive Octopus, Betsy Rich, T-Bug, Christine Moljadi, Morgan Brittingham, Blaufrosch, a.k.a. Clara Jurisons, Vix, Anne Maria, Carl Ziegler Jr., Clyde, Jennifer Wilson Richter, Too Fidgety, Wendy G, Elena MK, Caitlin Martin, Pungram 101, Minnesota SPT, Tasha, Stuart Slattery, Simone Valdez, Christian Schradergaards, Bonnie, Oma D, Rynel Alara, Kristen Arnold, Aaron Carey, Lynn Simpson, Melissa Emmel, Desiree Davis, Jennifer Ramirez Johnson, Dalek Party, The Warped Witch, Dizzy Dancer, Creative Otter, Yadmit, Supergirl Sway, Rachel, Anya Brandt, Ebby, Leah Marie Matson, Lady Digitalis, Jesse, Shay 10, Julia Franzoni, Sparks, Gloria Eichmann, Thomas Huff, From Strings to Things, Soy Kasumi, Jessica Gasparini, Robert Jr., Caitlin and Ndana Lanchanese, Lauren Smith, Anna G, Serpentine Fire, Melanie the SLP, Stuart Lee, Solstice, Chris Millanak, Mackenzie Kennedy, Libby, Hetty, Hantapalooza, Lisa MN, a.k. Schmutt, J Moon, a.k.a. Schmutt, J Moon, Kelsey H, Paper Sky, Hannah Cook, Nikki Larkin, and please welcome our two newest patrons, Campusar and Britt Clark.
Campus.
Thank you all for supporting the podcast.
And we're going to be, I know we mentioned a little bit about eugenics with Worm Boy, but I'm definitely going to be doing a bonus episode on some eugenics soon, and like just where that came from and how gross it really is, and because we need to talk about some human experimentation in the past.
Yeah.
Like with World War II and all that. So that's coming too.
Yeah.
Because it did involve illness and poison and everything else. But today we are talking about, I don't want to say it's one of my favorites because I actually hate this bacteria, a Streptococcus. I hate it, but I like reading about it. It's a love-hate relationship. Mostly hate. We are going to talk about Streptococcus.
Language.
Strep. That's what it's called. So most of us have either heard of or had strep throat. I think a lot of people have had strep throat. It's pretty common, especially in childhood. Some of us have heard of scarlet fever as well, I am sure. There's also rheumatic fever. We're going to talk about that. And most women should know or remember hearing about toxic shock syndrome, although both men and women can, have that. And it sucks, but we're going to talk about that as well. It's a little less common, thankfully. We also can't forget childbed fever. This is when women contracted bacterial infections during childbirth, mainly due to the lack of hand hygiene, horrible lack of sanitation in general. But all of these illnesses have something in common, and they can all be caused by this little chain-like bacteria known as Streptococcus. The name actually comes from the Greek streptos, meaning chain, and kokkos, meaning berry. So Streptococcus.
Okay. So Staphylococcus has a similar etymology.
Yes. Bacteria are often named for their structure, which is very helpful considering the different shapes. You got your rod-shaped bacteria, your berry-shaped, your little round-shaped, right? There's just different shapes. And shape does matter because anatomy, even for bacteria, tends to dictate physiology. Strep infections have been around for a very long time. They are described as far back as the 4th century BC, and I'm sure they were around before then as well. Hippocrates makes mention of erysipelas, which is the Greek for red skin. Makes sense because we use erythema sometimes for red, redness.
Erythematous.
It sounds like a name like from back in the day, or like a Assassin's Creed character's name.
Antonius.
My great-grandfather's name was Lucius. And this is a good description of scarlet fever, which we'll cover in just a second. The genus Streptococcus was named by Austrian surgeon Theodor Billroth, who in 1874 described small organisms as found in either isolated or arranged in pairs, sometimes in chains, in cases of erysipelas or wound infections. So over subsequent decades, as microscopy and staining techniques improved, Many different researchers characterize the bacteria now known as Streptococcus pyogenes. So, or you could, it's a B hemolytic Streptococcus. We will cover that. So you have Streptococcus pneumoniae and other species. There are just different species of concern to us. So we're just going to cover the most important ones, the most common ones, that kind of thing. So let's cover group A strep, GAS. Sometimes it's written as GAS just because it's easier than saying group A Streptococcus like 800 times. Gas. I'm just going to call it group A strep to make it easy. So
you can say gas.
No, I don't want to say gas.
Okay.
Because but somebody might be like, wait, if you have gas, you have this too? No, it's not the same thing. So I want to simplify it, but also make sure people know what we're talking about.
Gotcha.
Okay. It's the one that is most commonly encountered. There are more than 80 different strains of group A strep. And we're going to discuss Streptococcus pyogenes, as it is the nasty little critter that causes strep throat and some skin infections like Impetigo. And we're going to start with Impetigo because it's kind of the mildest form, really. This is most commonly found in infants and children, usually between the ages of 2 and 5. You can be older too. Just being older doesn't mean you can't get this. And it may be caused by both Streptococcus and Staphylococcus bacteria. It usually appears as these reddish sores, like on the face, usually around the lips, but you can like the nose and mouth, but it can also be on the hands and feet. It could also appear on the scalp, hairline, legs, and arms. It's just most commonly seen around the nose and mouth area. Over about a week, these sores burst and just develop this sort of like honey yellow colored crusts. I know it sounds gross, but it's just what they do. It's how they have to dry out and all this. The sores can spread to other areas of the body through touch, clothing, towels. It's just very contagious. Itching and soreness are generally mild. It looks kind of worse than it is usually. It can get worse though if not treated. Now the bacteria usually enter a child's skin through a cut, scrape, rash, insect bite, really any kind of small sore or anything like that. It can also occur as a result of other skin conditions like eczema, especially if the kid's scratching the area. Children actually don't need any obvious skin lesions or breaks for the infection to affect them. You may not even notice any sort of cut or anything like that. It's highly contagious. Most people get it through direct skin-to-skin contact. You can get Impetigo by coming into contact with sores, mucus, or nasal discharge from someone who has it. Children and athletes like football players and wrestlers can get it this way because there's just constant contact. Not the sports for me. I mean, I don't get it myself, but yeah. People can also spread Impetigo by sharing items such as towels, clothing, or other personal items with an infected person. Something I just don't recommend doing anyway. You can get staph infections this way too. If someone has a staph infection and you're sharing towels. Did you remember that episode of New Girl when Nick was like, "That's my towel." What's the other guy's name? Schmidt was like, "No, that's my towel." And Schmidt was so disgusted, and he's like, "Well, you wash it, right?" And he's like, "No, I don't wash my towel. My towel washes me. Cleans. I'm clean when I use it. So no, I don't." As much as I identify with Nick socially, some of the things he said and did, I was like, "Oh my God, no." Anyway, good show though.
Great show.
So you don't share towels unless you are in a bind and you absolutely have to. You're in a cabin, there's one towel. That sounds like a weird book trope, but just don't. It's like sharing a toothbrush. You just shouldn't do that, right? It's gross. Now, a less common form of this condition is called bullous impetigo. This causes larger blisters on the trunk of infants and young children. It's less common. It looks worse than it is. Again, they usually burst and crust over. I know it's gross, but it is what it is. Still good to treat usually with antibiotics and such. Now, ecthyma is a serious form of impetigo. This usually develops from untreated impetigo because the bacteria will just continue to proliferate, and it can cause painful fluid or pus-filled sores. No fun. Now, treatment for impetigo involves antibiotics, including oral and or topical antibiotics like ointment. And it's very contagious. Like I mentioned, children should actually avoid contact with others, such as in daycare or school, for a good 48 hours after the first dose, just to be safe. Now, the bacteria that cause impetigo can actually live on dry surfaces for weeks or even months. So a lot of sanitizing.
Months?
Just sanitize.
Press.
Well, strep itself can live on surfaces for a while. That's why you should always sanitize your carts. You go into a grocery store. Because look, people are always doing this. Kids are like right there, touching everything.
Sorry.
Look,
That image. Let me touch this
can't.
cart now.
I can't. Yeah. And people are like, oh, she's just a germaphobe. No, you don't understand the
No,
amount of grossness on like these carts and everything else. Just, Anyway, moving on. Just keep that in mind as we talk about strep, because that's strep bacteria in general. It can stay on surfaces for a while. Good to sanitize. Okay. If left untreated, further systemic complications may occur that we'll discuss in a moment, because other infections can also lead to such complications, other infections involving strep. So I'm going to go over some more strep stuff, and then we'll go over the complications that all of these can cause if left untreated. Okay. So strep throat. Streptococcal pharyngitis is more common in kids, but adults can easily get it as well. And that includes if you've had your tonsils removed. There's this myth that just goes around that if you've had your tonsils out, you can't get strep. I've had strep. My tonsils got taken out when I was like 21. Also, sucks when you're older when you get your tonsils taken out. I'm just saying. It takes longer to heal. I didn't eat for 2 weeks. It was awful. I could barely drink water. They put me back in the hospital because I was dehydrated because drinking water hurt. And you can't talk either. Anyway. But yeah, you can still get strep with your tonsils removed. I've actually had it quite a few times as an adult, mainly through catching it from Camilla when she's had it. But strep throat is very contagious. It causes such symptoms as fevers, a very sore red throat, sometimes with blistering or white yellow patches in the back. Some younger kids won't even have the sore throat so much. So it kind of depends on like the kid and the age and, all that. Some do, some don't. But a lot of the time the sore throat is there. Painful swallowing, enlarged and tender lymph nodes around the neck, and the symptoms may also include headaches, chills, runny nose, cough, nausea, abdominal pain, rash, hoarseness, and bad breath. Abdominal pain is another like one of those like you got a sore throat and they're telling you their tummy hurts really bad. Like that's a pretty big sign too. A lot of times when you call the doctor to make an appointment for these kids, they'll ask you if they have a fever and a sore throat. They're like, yeah, bring them on in. Because it's very possibly strep throat, and they need to treat it before it becomes worse because it can get pretty bad.
That's a clever triage of symptoms over the phone.
Yeah, they need to make sure they need to test for strep basically, because it doesn't just go away on its own. It's just one of those illnesses that once your kid has it, it's pretty easy to spot the next time around because the symptoms are pretty predictable, and the throat pain is usually worse than your typical cold, and obviously it lasts longer than a cold would. And these symptoms can come on within 2 to 5 days of exposure. If strep is suspected, you'll have a healthcare professional test for it using one of those annoying swabs in the back of your throat. Sometimes they go ahead and get 2 of them just to be sure, but it's not fun. That one time I took Camilla, and I knew she had strep. I was like, I just know it. Mm-hmm. You've seen it enough. And so we went to the doctor, and she kept her mouth closed. She would not let him test for it for 30 minutes. We had to talk her into it.
I forgot about this.
She was like, 30 minutes we took just sort of getting her to open her mouth.
Did you tell me about this?
Yeah, this poor, and it wasn't her regular doctor either. This poor guy was young and kind of new. Like her regular doctor was out. I think he was just sort of interning and stuff and helping out. But
so he stuck with it. He was like,
yeah, well, we're
going to negotiate with this child because it's strep throat.
He kept looking at me, and I was like, I mean, I can't just force her on the thing and hold her mouth open. I guess you could, but I'm not going to do that to my kid because it'll just make her scared for the rest of her life to go to the doctor, right? I'm not going to traumatize my child. But
I'm so sorry. I forgot.
She finally relented because she knew she wasn't getting out of it. So I think she was tired of sitting there. But yeah, they put it. It's not comfortable because your throat's already sore, and they have to put it back there, and it makes you gag a little bit. So it's not fun, but it's usually a quick process if you let them do it. You might as well just go ahead and let them do it and get it over with. Yeah. But again, it is very contagious. It can spread via respiratory droplets, as with sneezing, coughing, laughing, speaking, just being right next to each other at school. And such droplets can remain in the air for a bit before falling to the ground or surface. You can also easily pick it up on surfaces, touch your face, and boom, strep. Like doors, shopping carts, gym equipment, school desks, cafeteria tables, those trays. They don't wash those trays that well. Handrails, another one. Handrails are always pretty disgusting. Now, this time of year is just prime time for germs like this because kids are just near each other again a lot. They're touching everything. They touch their faces, and strep just spreads really easily, So thankfully, it's easily treated with antibiotics like penicillin, clindamycin. It's actually developed some resistance to streptomycin these days. It's kind of funny because it's got the name strep in it, but it's relatively resistant to it these days.
Mm.
But it's still pretty good with penicillin and clindamycin. It's very important to exclude those infected from group settings, so like schools, birthdays, play dates, for 24 hours after the first dose of antibiotic, because the infection can still be pretty contagious until then.
Yeah.
Now, it is important to treat strep with antibiotics because the bacteria can roam and lead to further illness and serious complications of the heart and kidneys. So it's just really important. Strep A can also cause scarlet fever. Now, technically, scarlet fever is caused by a toxin produced by the bacteria, by the strep infection, usually of the throat or another area of the body. Now, with this illness, you have all of the symptoms of strep throat, along with this red, sandpapery rash that it usually starts on the face and then spreads all over the body. The treatment remains the same, like antibiotics and also symptomatic support, as you go. Also, they should not be around others for about 24 hours after the first dose of antibiotic either. Now, scarlet fever is mentioned a lot in older movies or books or media set in older time periods, such as Little Women, when Beth March,
Yes.
she gets really sick. Remember, they don't have antibiotics at this point. And if you don't know or remember the story, she does recover from that illness, but she actually dies later of complications from the illness.
She did.
So
my sisters loved that movie.
Yeah.
I've seen it many times.
Also, Beth March is actually based on Louisa Alcott's sister, Lizzie Alcott, who also died of complications from an earlier scarlet fever
Get out of here.
infection.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's who she's based on.
Write what you know.
There you go. Especially back then, because what you knew was pretty terrible. Like, you didn't have to make stuff up. You could just look around you.
There was a story everywhere.
Honestly, today you could probably do the same.
And that's when the Fire Nation attacked.
Oh, why am I so bad at being good?
It's right here on the back of your laptop.
I like Prince Zuko.
Yeah.
Another depiction of this illness can be seen in the classic children's book, The Velveteen Rabbit. Now, I loved this story as a kid. It was one of my favorite childhood stories, which probably says a lot about me. It's kind of dark for a kid's story, but I loved it. It has a great ending, okay? It's about this little boy. He's got this stuffed rabbit. And he loves it, and he plays with it. Those kids who have those toys, and they play with it so much. It's ragged, right? They love it so much. And it's basically his little best friend, this little rabbit. But he ends up getting really sick, and he ends up with scarlet fever, and he has to be sent somewhere to get better. And the doctors say all of his childhood things have to be burned because of the possibility of contamination. This is just what they did then. They didn't have Lysol. They didn't have your room sprays, right? This was their way of getting rid of illness, burning things to the ground. We talked about that with plague too. People just burn houses down. So the stuffed bunny is included with this stuff, but a fairy comes along, turns him into a real bunny because of how much he was loved. It's really sweet and cute and kind of sad, but like sweet too, because the bunny is not burned. He's turned into a real rabbit. So yeah, they didn't have widespread use of antibiotics for strep infections until about the 1940s. Before this, the illness could be quite deadly, actually. Prior to antibiotics, strep/scarlet fever had a 15 to 20% mortality rate. And it was pretty feared in childhood. Most people develop some immunity to the toxin produced by the bacteria, though not the bacteria itself, mind you, by adulthood. It doesn't mean you can't get strep again, just that it will not be as severe as, say, scarlet fever typically.
That's how Beth March caught it. She was helping a family with young children that were sick. That's how she caught it.
Yeah, it's very contagious.
It was an immigrant family that didn't speak English, and Beth just showed up to help them. They handed her a child who was screaming because it was sick.
And they might not even known it was ill.
Not at all.
It is estimated that only about 10% of those exposed to the bacteria develop strep throat, and then only 10% of these individuals, mostly children or individuals who are immunocompromised, will develop scarlet fever within 12 hours to 7 days of the initial infection, like especially if it's not treated, because the bacteria is releasing that toxin. Now, untreated strep infection can also eventually lead to this autoimmune response because the less specific attacks of the escalating immune system response kind of falsely recognize the host cells and attack the joints, brain, and heart. This is a condition that is traditionally called rheumatism. So Now, the acute attacks are called rheumatic fever, and they can start to occur 1 to 5 weeks after the initial strep infection. So if you've got strep, scarlet fever, scarlet fever can come about because of strep. So you can get strep, scarlet fever, and it can lead to rheumatic fever, or you can have strep and it can just lead straight into rheumatic fever, if it's untreated, that kind of thing. Now, this complication is not contagious, though the original strep infection is. Other potential complications of untreated strep infection are pneumonia, kidney disease, tonsil abscesses, and arthritis. The most concerning long-term outcome of rheumatic fever is heart damage or rheumatic carditis.
Yeah.
Now, the heart valves are frequently affected with this condition. Other problems can include a swollen heart muscle, myocarditis, heart rhythm issues like atrial fibrillation. This is a complication you would have to deal with possibly the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Or heart failure, which, is where the heart doesn't pump properly.
Mm-hmm. I met a guy at church one time who was in like his late 20s, maybe, disabled veteran. He was disabled because he said, I got an infection that affected my heart. I'm pretty sure he's talking about strep.
Very much likely was. Yeah. Was he World War II?
No, he was in his late 20s at that moment. So right now he'd be late 30s. I met him probably a decade ago. Mm-hmm.
Where was he from?
He was American.
Did his parents believe in medicine?
I don't know. He was a very goofy guy. He was so funny because he was married to this girl who was a teacher, and she was like super put together and conscientious and self-aware. And I really was afraid she'd married a fool. God bless him.
Well, I mean, you don't typically see this too much anymore unless people just aren't treating their kids for strep infections, which they should be, but anyway.
And I don't know if it happened on deployment or not. You know what I mean? I don't know if he was like out in some fourth corner of the world or whatever. I mean, I need more detail.
Yeah, like if he was a part of the American military, though, they would have had ways of dealing with strep.
One would think.
So anyway, okay, so one example I know of for this complication is, of course, the late actor Jeremy Brett. It's one of my favorite actors of all time.
You can do better than that.
He played Sherlock Holmes in the Grenada series. Yes. Was really good. He's my favorite Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
Now he had strep and then rheumatic fever as a child. The illness damaged his heart valves. He died back in 1995 of heart failure, which he had as a result of his scarred valves and his really bad habit of smoking. He smoked a lot. According to like one of his best friends and co-stars, the guy that actually played Watson, he said that Jeremy Brett smoked like 60 cigarettes a day.
Okay.
Which not good at all for you anyway. You can definitely get some heart failure just from that. But as well, your venous system is going to be affected by that too. But he also suffered from bipolar disorder. He had some pretty serious manic depressive episodes as well. So I don't know if that was part of his addiction with cigarettes. Like maybe it was just his way of dealing with some stuff. But yeah, but his heart was actually double the size of a normal heart by the point of his death. It was working hard.
Megaly.
Yeah. And you can tell he was not well later in his life. He had obvious signs of fluid retention. He had the edema around the eyes, and he just looked sort of pale and tired. You could even see it in the skin a lot of the times.
His earliest headshots, like professional headshots, he is slim and trim, couldn't be any more handsome. And then the photos from around the time of his death, it's striking.
Yeah. You just look tired because you are. Because breathing at that point is very difficult. And obviously your heart's not pumping correctly or well. So you're not getting the energy you need anyway. So he had obviously there's obvious signs of fluid retention as well as fatigue. He had trouble breathing. He was still acting. He would even say things like, the show must go on, He's very much in his lane with acting.
All I can hear.
He was very dramatic.
Yes. All I can hear is that line from Tim Allen to Alan Rickman in Galaxy Quest.
Damn you.
I played Richard III.
Now look at me. Look at me.
I was an actor once. There he goes.
God, I miss Alan Rickman so much.
One of the most underrated movies in the history of cinema, y'all, is
He's
Galaxy
so
Quest. If you have not
funny.
seen Galaxy Quest, you haven't lived.
Especially if you love sci-fi, because it's kind of a parody of it, but it doesn't like mock it. It doesn't mock it so much as it's funny. It's just really funny.
It pulls out all the tropes. It's so
it does,
much fun.
but it's respectful of the genre at the same time.
The way they lean into how, this classically trained Shakespearean actor from the UK ends up famous for "By Grapthar's hammer, what a savings."
And he hates the line so much. And I'm pretty sure like Tim Allen's character is based on like, what's his name from the original Star Trek?
Captain Kirk.
Yeah.
100%.
He's so like
oblivious.
Big time.
High on himself.
Anyway, yeah.
Back to poison things.
It's fun times though. It is a funny movie. So yeah, he was still acting. He would have like an oxygen tank on set between takes, It was really rough.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Now, Bill Paxton is another example. He had heart damage that resulted from a childhood case of rheumatic fever when he was 13.
I didn't know that.
The guy in Twister.
Yes.
I only know him from that movie.
God, I know exactly who Bill Paxton
I used to love Twister. Yeah.
Good Lord. Weird Science?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you go.
Wow.
I only knew him from Twister.
Yes.
I used to love Twister, even though it is kind of not the most accurate of movies, but still.
But who cares? You got me, Joe.
Liability only.
Okay.
Anyway, we've got cows.
I gotta go. We got cows.
There's just so many good lines you could just remember.
Yes.
God. Okay. But he actually, he had rheumatic fever when he was 13. Later ended up with heart issues from that. He later died of a stroke after heart surgery in 2017 at the age of 61. So he was having heart surgery and it just, Now, the guy who wrote the song Splish Splash, Splish Splash, I think that's him. Yeah. I think that's that song. I don't know any other songs named Splish Splash. Bobby Darin, he also had rheumatic fever when he was 8 years old. He was told he wouldn't live to see 16. He ended up dying at 37 in 1973 during heart surgery. So just
he was a singer.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's got to be difficult. Now, just like strep and scarlet fever, the resulting complication of rheumatic fever was a bigger problem before antibiotics hit the scene, as you can imagine. So like in the 1920s, and this is what Beth March would have been dealing with she would have died of heart complications due to having had rheumatic fever, because that's what it developed into. In the 1920s, rheumatic fever was a leading cause of death for people between the ages of 5 and 20. In 1947, a medical journal article called it childhood's greatest enemy. And it's funny because like these days your kid gets strep and it's like, I give us some antibiotics. Like we don't think about it like that because we haven't seen it like that, right?
Just like the measles.
It's like we don't think it's serious because we haven't seen how serious it can be.
The word polio does not mean anything to us.
Now, about 100 years ago, there were more pediatric hospital beds occupied by children with rheumatic fever and rheumatic heart disease than all other infectious diseases combined. This is according to Dr. Stanford T. Shulman, who was a professor emeritus of pediatrics at Northwestern University Feinberg School of Medicine in Chicago. That was a lot. But he actually...
played Richard III.
He actually... he's written about the history of such diseases. And he says, that just gives you a handle on how really common this illness used to be, before antibiotics. Yeah. Cardiovascular pathophysiologist, Dr. Catherine A. Tobert, who was an adjunct professor at Utah Southwestern Medical School. No, UT, sorry. So I've been watching too many Secret Lives of Mormon Wives.
University of Texas, Southwestern.
Yeah, I saw UT and I was like, Utah. Anyway, no, UT Southwestern Medical School in Dallas. I was like, I didn't think she was from Utah, but she worked at a Veterans Administration hospital early in her career, and they routinely saw World War II era patients who'd had rheumatic fever and were suffering from related heart problems more than like 30 years later. So you can like have the illness, and sometimes you won't even know that it affected your heart. You think you've recovered, and then some years down the line, you're having heart trouble. And it's because of the scarring and the damage it's done to your heart. Right. Recovering from rheumatic fever actually took months for a lot of children. They would go to these like convalescence homes where they could have their own rooms and like nurses could help care for them and keep them entertained as best they could, because a lot of them were bedbound for a while. Like they couldn't really get up and do a whole lot because they were tired. It was, it affected their heart. They didn't have the energy like most kids had. So yeah, rheumatic fever actually led to the founding and growth of many children's hospitals because such facilities were just needed. Rheumatic fever also encouraged the establishment of the American Heart Association in the 1920s.
My goodness.
Dr. Paul Dudley White, one of its co-founders of the AHA, he actually met his wife, who was a social worker. Her name was Ina Reed, while the two were researching rheumatic fever. So
that's hot.
He explained that the tremendous crippling of the young people from rheumatic heart disease was enough for the founding of an organization that would lead the fight against it. So that's, how not the only thing, not the only reason for the AHA, but it's very much part of it.
Sure.
So
I would have thought it was cardiovascular disease, traditional cardiovascular disease.
Well, you've got like all these kids basically getting disease of the heart because of this illness. So it's like,
yes,
and they're going to have heart problems for the rest of their life.
That tells you how common it actually was that it provoked. We got to do something professionally speaking. Yeah,
because this is not, these kids are going to end up disabled for the rest of their life from this. And we're just going to have a bunch of adults with heart problems if they survive childhood. Now, rheumatic fever, it just left kids disabled a lot of the time because of the problems it caused the heart. It robbed many kids of that sort of youthful energy, being able to run and play. Instead, these kids struggle to walk or run far without needing to stop and breathe and rest. Treatment and rehabilitation actually cost families a lot of money, as you can imagine, as well. So money from the then new Social Security program was actually earmarked for their care and for cardiac research in the late 30s. It's like they knew like they were going to have a problem with all this. I mentioned World War II veterans a minute ago, and that's because between the lack of antibiotics and better hygiene techniques and the close quarters of training camps, many troops were affected and some were unable to stay in the military as a result. In its 1953 annual report, the AHA, American Heart Association, noted that 210,000 young men had been rejected for military duty because of rheumatic heart disease. It also killed a lot of people during the Civil War era, as you can imagine. It was around then too, and it's been around for a while. It killed a lot of people in that time too. I mean, a lot of things killed people during the Civil War.
Yes.
Now, the good news of today is that treating group A strep infections early with antibiotics has reduced the mortality rate of scarlet fever to less than 1%, and rheumatic fever and its complications have become less common. It is, however, still a problem in many places. According to a 2023 review in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology, rheumatic heart disease remains the most common cause of cardiovascular morbidity and early mortality in young people worldwide. So it's still a problem in places they don't have, good care. So statistics from the AHA show that rheumatic fever or rheumatic heart disease were responsible for more than 3,900 deaths in the U.S. in 2021, with the highest rates clustered in Alaska, Mississippi, Alabama, Kentucky, and Utah.
Yikes.
A lot of southern states in there. So worldwide that year, rheumatic heart disease actually killed an estimated 380,000 people. So that's worldwide. I just feel like here we don't have much excuse.
There's none.
And I get it, access to medical care can be a difficult thing. It's expensive.
Yes, but why?
But here in America, a lot of the time, you can get antibiotics for free in certain programs. It's just which is a great thing.
It's great.
So I think most of these numbers, I think when it comes to American stats, have to do with not trusting medical professionals, not taking their kids to the doctor when they get sick, that kind of thing. And I know, people will be like, well, people have to work and people, they don't mean to. And I'm like, I get that. But there needs to be more education on if this is happening with your kid, that crap needs to be put aside. You know what? If your boss would rather your kid die of rheumatic fever, screw him anyway. You know what I mean? It's not worth it. It's just not. And he's not going to pay for the kid's, heart care later either.
No.
Neither is that insurance company, probably.
Nope.
It's just, I know it can be hard getting healthcare even in the U.S. But it just feels like we have a lot more privilege and we do have a lot more capability to do so, if that makes sense. For this, at least. For strep. So we've come a long way, I would say. There has even been a strep vaccine in the works for a bit, still in the works. So hopefully.
Let's go.
But in some places, people are still suffering. And these wins that we have seen could easily slip away should we forget how bad strep can actually be. Now, I'm not done with group A strep, so hang in there. That was just the complications on the heart. There is also a complication of strep known as post-streptococcal glomerulonephritis. That's a big word for Elmo. This is an autoimmune complication of the kidneys due to fighting off a strep infection. It's a result of the body's immune system fighting off the group A strep infection, PSGN, if you will. It usually occurs 10 days after strep throat or scarlet fever and about 3 weeks after a group A strep skin infection, because you can have the skin infections too. Symptoms of this nephritis include dark reddish brown urine, swelling in the face, hands, and feet. Your kidneys aren't working properly. Decreased amount of urine or decreased need to urinate, as well as fatigue. It's treated by managing symptoms, including limiting salt and water intake or prescribing medication to reduce the swelling. Antibiotics can also help kill any strep A bacteria in the body. Now, the thing with antibiotics is you can kill the strep with it, but if it's been releasing toxins, like you would catch like scarlet fever with, like it's been releasing those toxins, antibiotics aren't going to get rid of that toxin. So whatever toxin it's released, that'll stay. So that's why another reason why it's important to get it treated early, because it's just going to keep doing that. Now, most people recover within a few weeks, but in rare instances, long-term kidney damage, including kidney failure, can occur. Worldwide, as of 2018, the death toll from strep illnesses is estimated at 500,000 annually. That's like strep illnesses in general. Now, something you may have seen in the news as well, even more recently, actually, is invasive group A strep. This is essentially the spread of strep to the blood and beyond, like a sepsis in a way.
Right. I was about to say sepsis.
But it's a severe and sometimes life-threatening infection in which the bacteria have invaded parts of the body, such as the blood, deep muscles, and fat tissues, or the lungs, especially. The most severe forms of invasive group A strep disease involve necrotizing fasciitis, which this also includes infection of the muscle and fat tissues, because you can have myositis as well, where it's eating away, dissolving your muscle, and streptococcal toxic shock syndrome, which is this rapidly progressing infection causing low blood pressure and shock and injury to organs such as the kidneys, liver, and lungs. Now, we've discussed necrotizing fasciitis a bit when we talked about Vibrio, which, by the way, there's been a few cases of Vibrio thanks to people eating raw oysters this last month, actually, I think in Florida. But this is your flesh-eating bacterial disease. It acts really quickly. It is vicious. I'm not easily scared anymore because of some things I've seen.
Okay.
But necrotizing fasciitis, which I have seen, by the way, is definitely something that terrifies me. Yeah. I also loathe, we all know this, the brain-eating amoeba. Hate those. Loathe entirely. But when it comes to rarities, necrotizing fasciitis is more common than amoeba boy over there. Just is. Flesh-eating strep specifically kills 20% of those who contract it, or about 100 to 300 people every year. Invasive strep overall kills 2,000 to 3,000 Americans each year. This is including necrotizing fasciitis as well as toxic shock syndrome related deaths. Now, more on toxic shock syndrome in a minute. I don't want to give all the names, abbreviations, just because I feel like that's going to get confusing if I do that. But invasive group A strep can infect even the smallest of wounds as well, just like leading to necrotizing fasciitis. It could be a nick from shaving, a thorn prick while gardening, paper cut, hangnail, needle puncture, insect bite, really any sore that leaves even a small opening of the skin. And it could just be an unfortunate happenstance. You cut yourself, great. Now you have an invasive strep infection that is eating away at your tissues. Now, do you remember the Mummy, the Curse of the Mummy? Those guys, they opened, what's his name's tomb? Was it Tutankhamun's tomb? And they were like, oh no, this is the curse. This is Mummy's curse or whatever. And like the one guy, like technically they died at various times years later. So it wasn't like so much like they died the next day or anything like that. But one of the guys, I think, who was there, he died after shaving. And I think he hit a mosquito bite or something, and it got infected. I don't know if that was strep or staph though that he had, but he ended up getting septic, and I think that's how he died. I mean, maybe don't go invade pyramids either, but he died from infection.
It wasn't the curse of King Tut.
No, still, maybe don't go steal other people's cultural belongings. Not a good idea. It's just not good. It's not very nice. So yeah, there was actually a boy in New York who had chickenpox, who contracted invasive group A strep from a chickenpox sore, likely scratched it or something, and he died 3 days later. So really sucks.
Yeah.
So you can any kind of thing like that. So in fact, around a third of children admitted to hospital with chickenpox have secondary skin infections, some of whom develop invasive infections like pneumonia, osteomyelitis, and septicemia. And in such cases, group A strep in particular can be associated with more infectious processes such as necrotizing fasciitis and toxic shock syndrome. Both are associated with high mortality and morbidity in children. So if they've got this going on, it's not good. Mm-hmm. Alongside the symptoms of chickenpox, you would notice increased lethargy and malaise, worsening fever, diarrhea, vomiting, soft tissue pain, obvious signs of wounds and redness, inflammation, just drainage, purulent discharge from existing wounds. And that's if they have, chickenpox to sort of be on the lookout for, because a scratch of that can also cause infection. Now, wounds will worsen quickly with invasive strep-related necrotizing fasciitis. Childbirth can be another way it's contracted, C-sections or vaginally. It can be contracted by scratching a rash, like with chickenpox, or picking a zit even. You may not even have any noticeable skin lesion at all, and it makes its way in. Those with existing strep infections are more at risk. They can easily cough the germ onto their hands, scratch themselves somewhere. It doesn't mean that you will absolutely get this after such an incident. It's still pretty rare, but there is the possibility, and this is just how it happens when it does. So extremes of age, less than 2 or greater than 65, concurrent acute viral infections, pre-existing skin or just soft tissue lesions, diabetes, heart disease, chronic just of COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, underlying malignancies, and immune suppression from HIV or with corticosteroids. All of these are associated with increased risk of infection as well, and progression to invasive disease. So there's all these things to think about as well. Mm-hmm. And people don't tend to think about diabetes in such a way as it being linked to many complications as it is, because there's a lot of complications that you can have with diabetes, unfortunately, including fungal infections and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. It's not fun.
Yep.
So repeated exposure to group A strep also increases the risk of invasive disease, intravenous drug use, trauma, young school-age children in the household because they catch things easily and spread them easily, and residents in nursing home facilities. All of this can result in repeated exposure to group A strep, kind of part of it. It increases the likelihood of coming into contact with more virulent strains as well. Now, many may recognize the name invasive group A strep from headlines in 1994, if you're our age, and you were alive then. But at that point, 15 people in Britain had contracted necrotizing fasciitis due to this bacteria, and 11 of them died because of it. However, the invasive sort has been known about for centuries, really. It's just not as common, and the public just sort of forgets about it until another resurgence, Now, while its effects have been known about for a long time, it was first officially described in 1924. So my grandfather was born. It came out to play quite a bit during World War II. You'll notice a lot of disease increases during war for obvious reasons, like groups of people moving around, cramped quarters, exposure to pathogens, or even, biological or chemical terror agents even. So now, it then seemed to disappear again until the 1980s when it returned with a vengeance. Literally, the newer strain was more virulent, and approximately 20% of patients with necrotizing fasciitis and 60% with strep-related toxic shock syndrome die. Now, about 10 to 15% of patients with other forms of invasive group A strep die. When I say scary, this bacteria literally eats flesh and muscle. It can, with the necrotizing fasciitis form, it can It can destroy the tissue at a rate of an inch or 2.5 centimeters per hour.
It's crazy.
Not cool. It literally can dissolve flesh, muscle, at this point be myositis, and organ tissues. It can kill within hours. Antibiotics are still effective if given in time, but with necrotizing fasciitis, the affected tissues are often cut off from the blood supply because of the damage that it's done. So, like, there's no effect when these antibiotics are given systemically. So diseased and dead tissues have to be removed surgically, whether that means like cutting out the infection or amputation. So whatever they have to do to keep you alive.
Yeah, that's what happened to Amy Copeland in 2012. She lost all 4 of her limbs.
And hers was from a different, but I don't know if it was from strep.
It wasn't. You're right.
But
it was a necrotizing.
But it was necrotizing. Yeah, it was a necrotizing fasciitis, just because of a different bacteria. But it sucks either way. So at that point, broad spectrum antibiotics need to be given IV for at least 7 days, probably longer. And without removing the affected tissue, the disease will continue to release toxins that will cause organ failure and shock. So if you could not tell, time is essential when noticing a wound may be infected. Wounds should always be quickly addressed. I mean, they should be washed, disinfected as needed, not with alcohol or peroxide unless it's literally all you have. You just don't. Also, some people can be allergic to Neosporin, so be wary of that. Wounds should be covered with a dressing or a bandage just to keep outside nasties from getting in. And for the love of God, don't go into a body of water. Don't go into the ocean, lake, river, creek, whatever with an open wound. Just don't do that. If the area around the wound becomes red or swollen and the wound begins to increase in size, go to a doctor or ER immediately. This includes with bites, like insect bites. Okay. All right, let's talk toxic shock syndrome real quick and about one of my fave creators ever, Jim Henson.
Yes.
But before Henson, we need to go over what toxic shock syndrome is. So toxic shock syndrome affects 1 in every 100,000 people. So it's not super common, thankfully, but toxic shock syndrome is more common in women, but it can affect anyone. This can be caused by both Streptococcus and Staphylococcus, actually. But since we're on the topic, I will mention them both a bit and toxic shock in general. So toxic shock can come about in a few different ways. It's long been connected with the use of tampons, though, especially in the 80s and 90s. Now, this was more of a connection made in the past with high absorbency tampons, but it is still possible with regular ones. It's just just so you know. In the 1980s, there was this outbreak of illness among women, especially with such symptoms as sudden fever, nausea, vomiting, watery diarrhea, rash that looks like a really bad sunburn or like little red dots all over. Dizziness, low blood pressure, redness in the eyes and throat, peeling of palms and soles of your feet, palms of your hand, soles of your feet. Now, what's happening essentially is certain strains of bacteria that produce poisons, like these toxins, may be on tampons or get on them when they're used for too long. And this is essentially the case with those with light periods. Using super absorbent tampons, I guess one reason is because you may think you can leave it in longer, or maybe it's also absorbing any sort of bacteria and keeping it there as well. Now, these toxins get into your bloodstream and can affect organs such as your heart, liver, or kidneys, and it happens pretty quickly, really fast. In the case of tampons, the usual culprit is staph, as it does live on our skin usually with no problem. Like, it's just there. It is just prevalent like that. But strep can do this as well. Now, staph typically causes toxic shock by getting into the body via small tears in the body, typically made by tampons. That's why you see it connected with that. The high absorbency ones can especially do this, but it's possible for all of them. Like with tampons, it can cause tears. It's just part of being a woman. Kind of sucks, right? And don't think you can't get this from pads either, because you can. Because if there's bacteria on the pads, it could still. I know there's a lot of TMI for a lot of people, but it's okay.
No.
You'll be okay. You'll be okay. It's good to know. Good stuff to know. It is very rare, and it's usually because of not using one properly. Okay, so it's not like if you wear one, you're gonna get this. No, it's very rare. If you use these things properly, you're likely not gonna have any problems. So it's advised that tampons be in for no longer than 8 hours at a time, and pads as well should be changed often. You just really need to make sure these are not, you're not using these too long at a time. The longer a tampon is in, the more opportunity for bacteria to take advantage of the situation, is what I'm getting at. It doesn't mean that, like I said, if you forget it and lift one in for 9 hours because you're overworked and stressed out, that you're going to get TSS and die. It's just a preventable measure. You don't want to consistently do that. Studies have shown that prolonged use of a tampon promotes the production of harmful bacteria, which can then make these toxins. Now, something I need to mention as well is a news story from about a year ago. There was a 12-year-old girl who contracted staph-related TSS after swimming in a lake at the Lake of the Ozarks in Missouri. I think I'm saying that correctly. She was apparently wearing a tampon, and the bacteria that was in the dirty water, this just got absorbed into her body that way. Sounds absolutely awful, and it is. And I'm sure it's really rare as well. But she was hospitalized after some pretty concerning symptoms, including fainting, and she went into multiple organ failure, but she was able to be stabilized, and she did make a full recovery. So be careful out there, ladies. We're going into lakes or any body of water with these kinds of things. Mm-hmm. There's also a Clostridium bacterium that can cause TSS via the vaginal route, but it's not as common. And since this isn't so very common anyway, I'm just mentioning that one. Now, treatment involves hospitalization as it is a life-threatening illness, and it will require such procedures as IV fluids, medications to raise blood pressure, as well as IV antibiotics, of course, to kill off the bacteria. The toxins that have already been released by the bacteria can actually be killed, as I mentioned. Oxygen and dialysis may be needed if respiratory and or kidney failure is occurring, and there may even need to be surgical intervention or amputation should tissue damage occur in the extremities, and as is in the case of necrotizing fasciitis. And fellas, don't feel left out, because you too can get staph-related toxic shock syndrome.
Good. I was feeling left out.
Because a nosebleed requiring gauze can also easily lead to such an issue.
Great.
Get all that. It's got, mucous membranes up in there too. Still rare. I know. I'm just putting it out there. Now, back to strep, though. It usually causes toxic shock via infection of other parts of the body. So whether it be a strep throat, impetigo, scarlet fever, a wound infected with strep, etc. And here's where our story on Jim Henson comes in. So this is another reason not to ignore strep throat or a strep infection, because it can also lead to toxic shock syndrome. So if you don't know, and how could you not? Like, how dare you if you don't know who this is? Jim Henson is the creator of the Muppets.
But who cares about that? He created the Labyrinth.
I was getting there. Okay. He also is. I love the Muppets too, though. He is the creator of.
If you want to push Becca into the realm of the irrational, bring up the Labyrinth.
There are other ways to do that as well, but it's probably, yeah.
Oh, this is the top of the list. Please continue.
But yes, he's also the creator of the Labyrinth. He's also, as well as Dark Crystal. He produced The Witches, which is based on Roald Dahl's book. Henson's Muppet credits actually include Sesame Street.
Yeah.
We know Sesame Street's important. It's a good show for kids.
Oh, yeah.
Also, The Muppet Show. I have The Muppet Show on DVD downstairs.
As one does.
And you're going to watch it with me soon, because I don't think you've seen it. Have you seen it? The episode with Elton John is really good.
I've seen it.
I loved this show. I would stay up late just to watch this show.
All right. Stay focused.
You stay focused. So that actually ran from 1976 to 1981. It won 3 Emmys, and it became the world's most widely watched television program with 235 million viewers in more than 100 countries. Fraggle Rock, the Ghost of Fafner Hall. I don't think I know that one. Series for cable. There were 3 movies: Muppet Movie of 1979, Great Muppet Caper, 1981, and The Muppets Take Manhattan in 1984. That was a good one. I remember that one specifically. So he had a lot. He did a lot. I think even his costuming department helped with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movies. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty cool. So super creative guy. He thought he just had come down with a bad cold around May 4th of 1990, but this escalated quickly, and by May 16th, he died at 53 of toxic shock syndrome related to a strep infection. The illness started with fatigue and a sore throat, as many do. He did let that get him down. However, he kept working instead of taking a break, like so many of us do. Mm-hmm. He was in the middle of a deal with Disney, actually, with selling the Muppets and agreeing to some creative stuff of his own. But one of his friends and colleagues, Frank Oz, who, if you know the Muppets well, you know who this guy is too. He told The Guardian in August 2021 that he believes that stress from the deal contributed to his untimely illness. Now, stress doesn't cause strep or any other illness, but
Yeah.
it can affect your immune system to the point of if you're really stressed out, your immune system is going to feel it too, basically, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Especially if you're not eating because you're stressed, not sleeping. It's that'll make it worse. So within a week, he was struggling to get out of bed or even eat. He had gone to visit family, and it was obvious that he was very unwell. And by the time he was on his way back, his daughter Cheryl had noticed that he was looking worse and he was acting strangely even. I think she said that he even just randomly said, "Hi ho, Kermit the Frog here," at the airport. And that is something that Kermit the Frog says, but he doesn't normally do that, she said. Like he doesn't just normally just say things like that.
That is so just spooky.
Yeah. But also
I've never
endearing
heard
in a
that
way.
before.
But it's
Well,
like,
of course, because it's his character. It's,
yeah, it's Kermit.
yes, that's altered mental status.
Yeah.
Oh,
So she noticed he was,
wow, thanks for that.
you're welcome. I got to make you feel,
Okay.
this is one of my favorite people.
Yeah.
So,
Hi ho.
Kermit the Frog here. Anyway, he canceled a recording for the Muppets the next day, which is something he just never did. Like he was always on top of things. So by that evening, his daughter Cheryl and her brother Johnny came to visit him with his ex-wife as well. Her name was Jane. She also came over, and he actually asked Jane to stay, which she hadn't done in years. He was not feeling good at all. Around 2 a.m., Jane said he began coughing up blood, and she insisted that they go to the hospital, but Henson refused. And he said, "Just rub my back, trying to calm down my breathing." At one point, he said, "Maybe I'm dying." Like he just literally said that. He literally said that. Now, apparently, from what I've heard from some, he was not the most trusting of doctors. I don't know if it was a personal reason or experience or maybe some influences. It was around, the 60s he kind of grew up from. But it was also said of him that he just didn't like to burden others. Like he didn't want to make people have to deal with him, as he put it.
When you're in just the production, the grind of production in Hollywood is like merciless.
Yeah, and he also thought it would go away on its own. I will say, if you are feeling that poorly and you are throwing up, if you are coughing up blood, you need to go to the ER. But he thought it would pass on its own. But I think also the altered mental status as well. He's probably not thinking straight either.
He's not going to make the right decision at that point.
So
he's becoming delirious. When he said "Hi ho, Kermit the Frog," he's in delirium.
Yeah. So he did agree to go to the hospital later that morning around 4 a.m. as he was struggling to breathe. He was taken to New York Presbyterian Hospital, I think in Manhattan. By the time he was admitted, his body was already shutting down. X-rays showed these small pockets of infection just throughout. He was put on a ventilator around 8, I think, that morning. But he died the next night at 1:21 a.m. of toxic shock syndrome resulting from Streptococcus pyogenes after a couple of cardiac arrests. According to the hospital, this was what they said. Tragically, the acute infection had already progressed to such an extent that he had multiple organ failure, kidney failure, inability of the blood to clot, heart failure, and shock. At this stage, antibiotics could not reverse the process.
That's right.
Again, like I said, antibiotics may go after the bacterial infection, but those toxins are not affected. They're going to stay in your body. He was overwhelmed with infection by then as well. But he had delayed treatment of what was originally a strep infection, and it just worsened to the point of organ failure, which it can do.
Sure.
Arthur Novel, spokesman for Jim Henson Productions, said that Henson did not seek treatment until it was too late, basically. An autopsy indicated that the infection had been raging throughout Henson's body for at least 3 days. He was likely septic for a good 3 days and just went into shock.
There's nothing to be done.
His son, Brian Henson, took over the company after his death and directed such Muppet films as Muppet Christmas Carol and Muppet Treasure Island, which we all love, and of course, many, many others. So Group B Streptococcus, GBS, if you will.
Not to be confused with Guillain-Barré syndrome.
True. I literally thought of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, but that's GBI.
Correct.
But this one is extra nasty. Thankfully, not as common as Group A beasties. They can cause illness in people of all ages, but it's particularly severe in newborns. Group B strep most commonly causes sepsis, pneumonia, meningitis. In adults, the most common health issues caused by this would be urinary tract infections, skin infection, bloodstream infections, sepsis, if you will. Pneumonia, skin and soft tissue infections, and bone and joint infections. This group can also lead to TSS and necrotizing fasciitis, but again, it's much more rare. Now, just with babies, I mentioned the infections with group B can be more severe for them. It can pass from mother to child during childbirth. Like if the mom is given antibiotics for infection prior, this is less likely to happen. So we don't see this as often these days because we can kind of prevent it, but it still happens in places that they don't do this or can't do this. Babies can present with symptoms as early as within a few hours to a few days. They would show signs like being unresponsive or floppy. They would call them floppy. They would grunt while breathing. There'd be poor feeding, fast or slow heart rate, and difficulty or slow/fast breathing, depending on the situation. Late onset can also occur with symptoms showing within 3 months of birth. And this infection can come from elsewhere as well, though not just childbirth. But early onset GBS, group B strep, not Guillain-Barré, used to be much more common than it is now before preventative care like we have today. So it's pretty rare to see early or late onset GBS infections in newborns. It is more complicated for adults in terms of how it's contracted because it doesn't affect adults as often as it does babies, but still it is a possibility. In fact, the source of disease caused by GBS in adults are really kind of unknown. The bacteria are present in both the GI and GU, genitourinary tracts, and they could be the source of infection. So it can be fatal. On average, 1 in 20 non-pregnant adults with an invasive strep B infection dies. So the higher the age, the more the risk for those without other medical conditions. But again, it is rare. So there are also group C and group G streptococcus infections out there, but these are way less common in humans. Group C and G strep most commonly live in animals such as horses and cattle and can spread to humans through raw milk or contact with these animals. But if it gets into the bloodstream and sepsis results, it can be fatal. So strep is nasty in all of its forms.
Yep.
But yeah, I just wanted to mention those last few because those do exist as well. We just don't see them as often, thankfully. We've got enough problems on our hands with group A strep.
Gotcha.
So and that's strep and Jim Henson.
Hi ho. Kermit the Frog here.
Now I'm going to watch the Muppets.
Yeah. All right. Thank you all so much for listening and watching to this episode. We will see you in the next one. Bye.
Bye.